The history of Earth is basically there is a military dominator. Almost at all times, there's somebody that's the most powerful military force, and they are controlling things.
There were empires way before America became an empire, but from the beginning of America, we were still a free country. That's not our job to worry about, man. And like, I'm sorry, I know like that rubs people the wrong way because they have this idea that we have to be the good guys of the world, even though we're objectively the bad guys in the world. But the truth is that, like I said before, we can't even protect freedom in our country. We're not spreading it around the world. Let's sit. The best thing America ever did for the world was exporting the best parts of our culture. Was that people wanted to listen to our music and wear our blue jeans and be cool like us. That's the best influence we could have on the world, is being a free country here.
Do you think on the dawn of colonization of Mars that it's okay not to strive to be the military dominating force on Earth as a country, or should we give that power to a corporation or to another country?
I would say that to keep us a free country, I am okay with sacrificing colonizing Mars.
When you say free country, do you mean that you're not like anyone can do any, like, what is your, like, because in a totally open system, it can be co-opted very easily by outside forces.
No, I mean, when I say freedom, I mean liberty. I mean negative rights. I mean the right to life, liberty, property.
So like no spying on people, that kind of stuff, you'd get rid of that. But then what happens then when the CCP is spying and infiltrating our media and making us think things like communism good? I've always thought communism was good.
I mean, who's really done more to infiltrate our country? I mean, how do they even infiltrate it? They infiltrate what? What do they pay
commercials
off? What do they
bots,
pay off our president's son?
Bot farms on social media.
Yeah, but that's always what they tell you. Right, universities, the government program that is universities, that's completely backed up by loans coming from the government. Oh yeah, social media companies that the government is.
Comments.
Yeah, dude,
what they'll do
this is all nonsense, dude. The idea that social media comments have had this huge influence. The truth is that all that's happened is that's been used as an excuse for the government to crack down on social media companies and insist that
What do you mean?
Huh?
We see it all the time. Companies caving to 30 people over nonsense. They get. So we were doing an event.
Yeah, but those are real people you're talking about. They're like social justice warriors. Like,
there's no way to tell.
There's no way to tell, and some of it very well could be China. They call it the 50 Cent Army. You know what this is?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
They go out there, they post pro CCP stuff, but we've also heard from other people who are familiar with China's actions that they're encouraging wokeness in the United States. TikTok, for instance, allows it here but doesn't allow it there. So I've personally experienced this, where you get one person pretending to be 50 to try and force a business, and it works.
Okay, I'm not arguing that has never had an effect on, say, like a business. I'm talking about more like on like subverting the entire country. But if you look at the main ways, what people try to infiltrate is they try to infiltrate the institutions of the government, or I suppose you could say universities, which is again basically a giant government program. It's all completely propped up by government-backed loans, or the whole industry wouldn't exist. I think that, yeah, look, you'd need to have a culture to guard against that type of stuff.
Like liberty.
And that's what you need, is a culture. If you want to guard against communism, you'd really like to have a culture that believes in liberty, also strong families and strong values. And all the government does is undermine all of this. This is like, I mean, from the welfare state undermining families to, the kind of like undermining churches and communities and all of this. This is what big government has gotten us.
So in essence, I guess your question would be, in essence, how do we prop up against things like that, Chinese bots and all of those different things to infiltrate that? To the point, it's our government doing it more than anybody else. And if we're going along with it and we're weakening it because the government is telling us to, right? Again, 2020, instead of us genuinely saying, fuck no, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not wearing a fucking vaccine, my business didn't close the entire time. We didn't stop at Black Guns Matter. We kept going. That is a culture of we're free. Now, if something is really there, we're going to be safe and responsible. We're going to mitigate our freedoms or our safety based on that freedom. Right? That culture compared to, hey, CCP, where we build stuff and people jump out of the fucking building and there's nets to catch them from killing themselves. When you compare that to a young person, you show them that difference, as opposed to them being told, yeah, socialism is great, and there's nothing to really counter that, no real information, then of course it's going to be more difficult. But that's not overwhelmingly coming from China.
Yeah.
Would you use like American propaganda to push that message on people?
What do you mean by propaganda?
Well, like
Coming
little
from what?
kids are the most susceptible. They made cigarette commercials illegal in like this whatever.
Well, they
50s
make
and
little
60s.
kids fucking do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah,
So
as a form
is
of
that
national
like-
propaganda to get people on board with American ideals.
I think that that word propaganda is kind of loaded, right? Because me saying I believe that everyone should have a firearm to be able to defend themselves and telling them about their human right to self-defense is me articulating that well is a form of propaganda, right? And it's in alignment with my agenda, which is freedom and liberty. Right? So when you say propaganda, what do you mean by? Do you mean like Bernays like just fucking lied to you propaganda?
And, yeah, like how deep would you take it? I mean, because I think right now they're using Google to subvert what they think is American whatever ideals to combat the CCP that's putting in like, hey kids, be a communist.
But hold on, let me just ask, because you're saying when they're using Google, who do you mean is using Google to combat the CCP?
Well, we know the FBI is in tight with social media networks, telling them what to post, what not to post,
The
or
government.
if and when.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's very murky as to who exactly.
And they certainly, at least according to Mark Zuckerberg, when he was asked why they suppressed the Hunter Biden story, the first thing he said was, well, the FBI came to us and told us there was going to be this big Russian dump. And then when there was this dump, they said this was all the dump. They all said this was the Russian propaganda.
At the
saying, like,
time, they told the staff not to investigate it, so they knew what they were doing.
So you know, if your concern is that like China is going to propagandize us, I go, okay, but like this is to justify the regime in Washington D.C. But then like look at who's actually propagandizing our kids. I mean, like, look at who's actually propagandizing them right now. It's the public school
corporations as well.
I got an idea.
To some extent.
So I think we've talked a lot about the things we don't like, a lot of the problems. Give me your guys' vision of what America should be.
Well, look, I mean, what America should be is it should be the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that as a starting point, like that's what we should have in this country. We should, like, it didn't have to be this way. Okay. There was nothing that was like written in the stars that everything had to go this way. And I'm not saying it has to be my utopia, that I want it to be this perfect, libertarian anarchist system. Sure, that would be best. But I'm just saying we didn't have to respond to 9/11 by starting 7 stupid wars and killing all of these people and passing the Patriot Act and all of this. We could have just, even went into Afghanistan and killed Osama bin Laden in Tora Bora when we had him cornered and came home. The war on terrorism was over by Christmas of 2001. We could have just not had artificially low interest rates in the early 2000s and blew up this housing bubble and had the financial crisis in 2008. We could have just not responded to COVID in an insane way. We could have just had a government who came out and went, there's this upper respiratory virus. We think if you're at risk, you should probably stay home. That's our advice to you. Everyone else, be careful. Maybe wash your hands. If you feel sick, stay home. We could have not tanked the entire economy and printed $6 trillion in a year and destroyed everything. So all I'm saying is like less of the evil stuff. We could do a lot less of this. It doesn't have to be, it's not a choice between what we have now and perfection. It's that we should always have liberty as like the guiding principle and being very skeptical of what the government does. That's what we need.
That, and all of that comes down to is just scaling back. I don't need more legislation to do that. Again, if we start from that Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and letting that be, okay, this is the litmus test. Is this, hey, if we're giving more and more government, more and more dollars, more and more power, more and more control, 80,000 more IRS agents, how does this get us back to more liberty? If it's a very basic question, it's a very basic answer. Nah, I'm not doing it. Tell me where it says in this that we should be giving this over there. If that's not the answer, then no, we're not doing it.
I completely agree, and I would just add to that like the mission here to me really is that, look, I mean, think about like how the massive propaganda campaign to push the COVID lockdowns, the massive propaganda campaign to push the vaccines, where it's like you have to hear about this constantly, completely oversold of like, if you get this, you can't possibly get COVID and you can't spread it. And if you question this, you're an anti-vaxxer and all of this. They use these massive propaganda campaigns because they know how important it is to have the population believing that they have legitimate authority over them and believing that they're doing the right thing. So I think the mission here is to counter the propaganda and to wake people up. Like you said, the mission isn't to take over the federal government and then, wield power over all of the people and do it in the right way. The mission here is to wake people up, to realize that what we ought to be striving for is to be very skeptical of all of these authoritarians who promise us that they're doing it for our own good. If we had a society like that, we'd be in much better shape.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast. And there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and we'll see you all there.